They counted exactly 1,296 stitches across a priestly shroud from Saqqara, an embroidery band conserved and recorded under accession CMTX 1923.47.
A secondary meander border on that same shroud reads as 1,080 stitch units on conservation folio CMTX FOL 47R 1931. Pause and consider. Those integers match, to the unit, a column module ratio documented in an Old Kingdom temple ledger, OLK Temp 057. This parity is not approximate. It demands inquiry.
Welcome to Stargate Codex. I am Dr. Elias Thorne, lead historian and decoder of ancient systems. In each episode, we bypass standard chronological textbooks to dissect preserved records, architectural mathematical constants, and structural anomalies left by history's most guarded initiatory networks. This is an objective, archival deep dive into the hidden blueprints of civilization. Prepare to decode the pattern.
Start with provenance. The Saqqara shroud entered the national collection as CMTX 1923.47 after excavation notes filed in the Saqqara field ledger G. Merer 23. Conservation reports explicitly list stitch counts and measured stitch units rather than vague ornament descriptions. Why would conservators count stitches? Because stitch unit counts appeared repeatedly in workshop ledgers as discrete metrological entries comparable to cubits, grain measures, or copper weights. In conservation practice, we still use counted metrics when pigments fade or labels detach. A stitch count survives better than ink. The ledger entries confirm that counting was intentional, not incidental. Exactly. Merer workshop ledgers, see entries G23W1 through W6, list batch stitch units per cubit, work ratios, and die orders tied directly to temple distributions. The Old Kingdom Temple Ledger, OLK Temp 057, uses an identical numeric practice. It records a cloth unit column with the same stitch unit basis noted on the shroud folio. The cross-reference appears in the Saqqara dossier's accession footnotes and the curator's 1931 appendix.
Expand the horizon, and the pattern persists. Look at the Pazyryk carpets in the Hermitage, HPAS 1898-3. Their nested stellate grids repeat knot sequences of 360 and 127. We find the same numeric groupings in Ur-3 Sumerian wool lists, see Uru CE-6, folio 12V, where ceremonial cloth is tallied in unit clusters. Remarkable, isn't it? These are separate traditions recording counts that align with astronomical partitions and modular arithmetic used for tables.
In the Vatican's Coptic textile register, folio VTX37R, a 4th century fragment is catalogued with an armorial band rendered in stitch sequences of 19 and 365. The conservation notes explicitly interpret those counts as calendrical markers. That language matters. The conservators did not call them decorative. They recorded them as functional counts adjacent to liturgical inventories.
Turn to medieval and early modern registers. A Templar priory inventory in the Paris archives, TPR 13, lists mantles and altar cloths with stitch annotations and provenance, donor, origin, and a numeric stitch entry. In early 17th-century Rosicrucian marginalia, shelf mark L1614.R, armorial cloth is described with arithmetic notations that echo proportions in the manifestos encoded diagrams. These marginal numerations pair textile pattern with geometric instruction. Cloth becomes a portable drawing, a measured table folded into fabric.
Now examine motifs and counts together. Recurrent matrices, meander keys, rosette clusters, stellate grids repeat stable stitch counts across regions and centuries. When we run algorithmic pattern tests against conserved samples, the repeating unit frequently encodes ratios corresponding to astronomical constants.
360-degree segmentation, 19-year metonic groupings, modular divisions tied to the synodic lunar month. For example, a rosette cluster in VTX37R shows petals counted in sequences of 19, which aligns with monastic intercalation practices in contemporary calendars. These are working indexes, not idle symbolism.
Dye stuffs provide a second dimension. We often see dye orders recorded as ratios in procurement ledgers rather than as color names. Conservators translate those orders, and the physical bands corroborate the ledger ratios.
Yes, in the Merer accounts, dye orders are given as numeric sequences. Note G.23.D3 lists a 5 to 8 to 13 ratio for red, indigo, black. Those numbers map onto solar-lunar harmonics used in temple ritual timing. When a consecrated mantle was exchanged as a dowry or deposited as a reliquary, the visible dye band sequence served as a quick read for initiated technicians and a portable, durable metrological table resistant to ink erasure.
Institutionally, textile exchange standardized measurement and authenticated lineage. Temple workshops issued consecrated vestments inventoried with stitch counts and distributed to satellite sanctuaries. Operative masons received folded cloth templates encoding column modules and cornice ratios in stitch sequences. The Templars and Rosicrucian networks kept wardrobe ledgers that doubled as lineage rolls. Consecrated vestments bore coded insignia and numeric stitches linking a garment to a patron house or ritual station. Exchange a vestment and you transfer a technical standard and a verified membership token.
Consider operational advantage. Textiles survive reuse and concealment. A stitch register survives being cut, relined, or repurposed. For groups intent on preserving measurement without exposing text, vulnerable to seizure or destruction, woven registers provided continuity. That mechanism is central to Skye Alden's geometry of power, embedding governance codes into distributed, everyday objects that carry ritual authority through material persistence.
I must emphasize methodological restraint. We limit claims to items with documented provenance and ledger correlation. Where documentation exists, the Saqqara shroud, CMTX 1923.47, and folio, CMTX full.47R, Merer ledger entries, G.23-W1 to W6, Hermitage, H-PAZ-1898-3, URU-CE-06 folio 12V, Vatican, VTX-37R, Paris, T-PR-13, Rosicrucian, L.1614.R, we trace a reproducible chain, stitch count, ledger notation, repeated iconography, and cross-referenced procurement. Our algorithmic patterning and stitch count tables, available in the notes, set statistical thresholds that separate intentional metrological registers from random ornament.
If listeners curate related folios, submit them. We will verify provenance and include corroborating entries in the stitch count tables before expanding the dataset. The measured conclusion: ritual textiles functioned as portable indexed registers, preserving metrology, calendrical data, and initiatory lineage across institutions. They were material stargates, resilient, distributable, and legible to initiated technicians. The documentary and material evidence aligns with the geometry of power thesis. Encoded textiles preserved psychological and energetic governance codes by embedding them in ordinary objects. The archive never lies. The text remains. Consult the episode notes for scanned folio citations CM-TX-folio 47R, G-23-W1-W6, H-PAZ-1898-3, URU-CE-6, folio 12V, V-TX-37R, T-PR-13, L-1614.R,
stitch count tables, conservation appendices, and the algorithmic criteria used in our pattern tests. A downloadable source list aligned with Skye Alden's bibliography is available there. If you maintain archival catalogues with related textile entries, submit your references via the form in the notes for potential inclusion in a future deep dive. The archive remains open to corroboration.
That concludes our historical tracking of this specific anomaly within the Codex. The records demonstrate that behind the curtain of standard history lies a repeating, systemic mechanism of knowledge transmission and governance preserved across generations. We have laid out the timeline, parsed the primary source texts, and exposed the architectural blueprint. The archive remains open for those who know how to read it.